program, Brian. So we need to move along here. What happened? Where did you crash, and what happened?
Well, what had happened was we ended up, while we were sitting there at Rome, and we were there for several hours also, we had made decisions that, weather had to be at a certain point and very clear, and I had to be able to see, that was the ultimate thing. I had to be able to see and have good weather. And we miraculously had a huge clearing in the weather. And, obviously during the stay there, too, I was able to replot out courses from Rome to Mountain Home. And, I had all my time and all that sort of stuff figured out. And so we took off, started heading over the Owyhee Mountains. We had gotten over several ridge lines. Things were, again, very, very good. But then all of a sudden, weather literally started forming right in front of us. And now, quickly.
Explain that for folks that aren't aviators. With the weather forming immediately in front of you, it's like a sudden thunderstorm?
Yeah, exactly. In the mountain areas, it's not that uncommon to see a really dramatic change in weather. And there were clouds present. So, it wasn't like there were no clouds and then all of a sudden there were. There were clouds present, but what these clouds started doing was, bunching back together and actually building upwards, so towering up and forming, like you said, things that would look like a thunderstorm to most layman folks. So there's a lot of turbulent winds, a lot of stuff that starts happening in that aspect. And so when I saw that, I actually started to veer off one direction to try and steer away from what I saw was building. And then the direction I started veering off, it was happening in that direction as well. And so I thought, shoot, I'm going to turn around and go back. Well, when I looked to turn around and go back, I was already boxed completely in.
So what happened right after that, Brian? What forced the plane down?
Basically a mountain wave or a reverse flow of air. Right after we crossed the ridgeline, it ripped the airflow out from underneath the wing and created a stall. Because I was watching everything, I was looking for icing conditions, all kinds of things, because weather was changing so fast. And what I saw was the airspeed indicator go from 110 down to 40 in the snap of a finger.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I had actually told my wife and daughter, I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to make it. I love you, because we were just above the mountain ridge lines and just underneath the clouds, so we didn't have much altitude to recover from a stall.
And you're flying visual.
Yes, correct.
Some people might think, well, he's got a radar in front of him, and he can see, like the big planes do.
Yeah, not in this case.
You're flying sight, and so am I hearing you right? Are you between the clouds and the mountains?
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, not somewhere any pilot wanted to be. I was really not happy or comfortable with the situation.
Now, could you at least tell, though? Could you at least tell how high you were relative to the mountains?
Yeah.
Okay. You just couldn't see it.
Right.
But you were able to land the plane. A controlled crash.
Yeah, I would say that. Right, even from the hospital bed, I had said I had a lot of help, and I think God definitely was there for the help for us. Because what had happened is the plane stalled. I made that statement to the girls, and I stuck the nose of the plane down towards the canyon to try and recover from the stall. And right before we basically hit bottom, I was able to get airflow back, and I lifted the nose of the plane up very abruptly. We hit two trees, ripping the wingtips off the trees, and then we smacked belly first into the next mountainside.
Then what'd you do?
Well, it knocked both my wife and I completely unconscious. We were wearing our seat belts, but my plane was older. It had lap restraint belts, just like you see in an airliner. Mm-hmm. And so the sudden impact launched us forward. I went through the windshield and back, and my wife hit the windshield on her side and fell back into her seat.
Well, I noticed in the 911 call you told, and by the way, Tim, he is a firefighter and has had some EMT training. And so he's calling 911 and saying, my head split open pretty good.
Yeah.
And you
I was, well, the rescuers described me, they said it looked like somebody had poured a huge bucket of tar over the top of me. Because I was covered in blood from basically my top of my head down to my waistline, and I bled pretty much throughout the night. The worst thing was we kind of went back and forth. I woke up hearing my youngest daughter screaming, for her mother, and so I woke up immediately and thought, wow, we're alive. I couldn't believe it. And then when I looked over at my wife, she was laying limp like a rag doll, actually getting ready to fall out of the aircraft because the door had ripped off on her side as well. And my daughter caught her by her shirt. And so my immediate thought was I thought I'd actually killed my wife in the impact.
And, we got 3 minutes, Brian. I hate to rush you, brother, but anyway, you're here talking to us today.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Again, just one miracle after another. People wondered about the cell phones. The cell phone shouldn't have worked. We were deep in a canyon, and only God knows why that cell phone, was able to work, because it shouldn't have.
When's the movie coming out?
We hear that a lot. I don't know. Somebody'd have to be interested, I guess, to put it into a movie form. I think it is a movie quality story. Of course, I'm a little biased, but there are so many miracles that God performed for us. It was almost hard to even list them in the book, and it's still happening in our lives.
Yeah, that's the broader point.
Right.
The story is interesting and intriguing in itself, but the broader point of the book is to show how many things had to happen that were miraculous in order for Brian and his family to live through this.
Absolutely. And then the other thing too is, we could have blamed God for what happened, but in fact, God makes good things out of bad, and that's the way our families embrace this.
Hey, do you still fly today?
I sure do. I started flying again in April of this year.
Okay, so it's kind of like if you have a car accident, it doesn't mean you're never going to get in a car again. You pilots view that the same way. What happened to you is explainable. Now, how you survived it is unexplainable outside of God.
Right.
But what happened? You got caught in a storm, and that every day we wake up and go out into the world, something could happen. So,
Brian, do you have a website where you find your book at?
Well, you can find our book on any of the online sources, Amazon.com. Of course, Harvest House Publishers has it. And a lot of the local Christian bookstores will have it available, as well as Sam's Club and Barnes & Noble. They're probably some of the bigger box stores that will have it. But you can find it anywhere. And then we do have a Facebook account that says that is rescued author Brian Brown. And that'll tell you a little bit more about, some of the other radio events that we're doing. So you can hear, people will know to listen for these broadcasts that are coming up, and then whatever other things that may come around that God brings for us.
Well, listen, Brian, thanks for your time today. We wish you the best, and glad that you were able to share your story with us and talk about the miracles that happened.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me.
All right, you're most welcome. That's Brian, Brian Brown, joining us from California. The name of the book is Rescued.